Hey everyone, my name is Jaggerous and I'm the Northern Realms Faction Ambassador. So, you've decided to play Northern Realms. Good choice, my friend. In this video, I'm going to be going through the basics of Gwent, as well as introducing you to the Northern Realms starter deck. Northern Realms is a fantastic faction with loads of different archetypes. If you want to swarm the board with an army of units, there's a deck for that. If you're more interested in synergies between tribes, such as the Cursed archetype, there's a deck for that. If you just want to hit your opponent in the face with ballista and trebuchets and various war machines, there's a deck for that. But without further ado, let's jump into the starter deck. So here we have the Northern Realms starter deck. This deck has high value units which you can play for points. It has boosting effects so you can use to apply extra points to units, and it has damaging effects which you can use to hit your opponent. Our leader is King FOLTEST. He is worth 5 power. And he boosts all other allies, so units on your side of the board, and non-spying units in hand and deck by 1. So when you play FOLTEST, every single one of these cards that is a unit gains 1 extra value. So he's quite strong over the course of a game, and he's a card that typically you want to play early. He doesn't boost spying units. Spying units are units that you play on the opposite side of the board. So if you're going to play a unit on the opposite side of the board, you're giving your opponent points, and this means that that boost doesn't apply to spying units, so you don't give your opponent extra points. He also has the crew tag. Crew is something that is used with machines. So machines are crewed. You have the ability to crew them, which is to like put people on them basically. So if I play a machine next to a unit that has crew, so I play a machine next to FOLTEST, then that machine will gain additional benefit. So it might increase the damage by 1, for example. This deck doesn't utilize machines and it doesn't utilize crew, but it's worth being aware of when you start to build decks. If you wanted to do a machines deck, for example, that your leader has this crew tag, as do some other cards. Next, we have Geralt of Rivia. This is what I meant by big units with big points. He is a 15 power play, so you play him down, you get 15 points. He's pretty solid. Next up, we have TRISS MERIGOLD. TRISS is also worth 15 points. But her points are spread. So she has 10 points in power and 5 points in damage. Damage that you can deal to enemy units. So you can hit an enemy for 5. Bear in mind, TRISS, you can actually use to hit units on your side of the board as well, because it just says deal 5 damage. It doesn't say deal 5 damage to enemies. So sometimes your opponent might play something problematic on your side, and you can actually use TRISS to kill that. Next up, we have PRISCILLA. PRISCILLA is worth 3 power and boosts 5 random allies by 3. So you want to play her once you have units on your side of the board, because if you just play her as an opening play, she's only worth 3 points because there's no one there to boost. But once you have 5 units on the board, you can then use PRISCILLA to boost them and gain a lot of value. So she's an 18-point play once you have 5 units. Then we have Royal Decree. Play a gold unit from your deck and boost it by 2. So we can use Royal Decree to target draw Geralt, TRISS, or PRISCILLA. So you get to choice when you play this. It boosts them by 2 and it plays them. So this is thinning and it's targeted draw for your gold cards, which can be very useful depending on what cards you need. You can situationally find your gold cards. Moving on to silvers, we have TROLLOLOLO, and he's kind of similar to Geralt in that he's solid number of points. He's got 11 power, but he also has 9 armor. Armor blocks damage. So if someone were to try and damage TROLLOLOLO and deal 5 damage, for example, because he has 9 armor, the armor would block the damage and he would just lose 5 armor. Armor doesn't add to your point total in order to win the game, but it does defend you, and also you have certain cards that you can use to remove armor and utilize it. So for example, there's a card which will remove armor from a unit and then boost by that number of points. So if you have that card, you could play TROLLOLOLO, then remove his armor yourself and turn that armor into points. So an armor deck is another archetype you could think about making as you start to deck build for yourself. Then we have Roach. Whenever you play a gold unit from your hand, summon this unit. So Roach will get played from your deck when you play a gold unit. So you don't want her in your opening hand. She's a good target to mulligan because, you know, if you have her in hand, she's just worth 4 points. But she adds extra points to all of your gold cards. Then we have DETHMOLD, and DETHMOLD spawns cards. So spawning is different from summon. Spawning adds a card to the game and then plays it, whereas summoning will play a card from your deck. So if this said summon Torrential Rain, you would need to have Torrential Rain in your deck. But it doesn't, it says spawn, so he creates either Torrential Rain, Clear Skies, or ALZUR'S Thunder. You have a choice. Torrential Rain is a hazard. Hazards apply a negative row effect to your opponent. In this case, it will deal 1 damage to 2 random units on turn start, so every turn you deal 1 damage to 2 random units on that row. Hazards actually can be removed though. If your opponent plays a hazard on your side, you have Clear Skies. Boost all damaged allies under hazards by 2 and clear all hazards from your side. So this would remove the negative effects from the rows and also heal damaged units by 2 or boost them. Then we have ALZUR'S Thunder, deal 9 damage. And again, this doesn't say to an enemy, so you can target units on your side of the board with this. But it is useful removal for maybe problematic cards that generate points over time. Those are typically called engines, so ALZUR'S Thunder is good to remove your opponent's engines. Then we have Dudu, copy the power of an enemy. So we can use him to damage an enemy, not damage an enemy, to replicate an enemy, sorry. So when we target an enemy, you want to target your opponent's biggest unit with this, and he copies the power. So then if they have a 10, he becomes a 10. If he have a 6, he becomes a 6. He's good kind of late in the round once they've generated something big. But he is situationally useful. If they don't play anything big, then he's not that many points. So this is maybe a card you could look to switch out when you start changing the deck for yourself. Then we have Commander's Horn. This is not a unit, this is a special card, as was Royal Decree, which means it has no body attached to it, but what it does is it boosts 5 adjacent units by 3. So adjacent units are ones that are next to each other on the same row. So when you're placing your units, be aware that Commander's Horn needs units next to each other in order to boost, so make sure you line up your units if you want to use this card. Then we have Manticore Venom, deal 13 damage. So we can use Manticore Venom as a removal card, kind of similar to ALZUR'S Thunder, but does a little bit more in terms of damage. We have TRIDAM Infantry, and we have 3 of these. These are a bronze card, which you can have up to 3 copies of, whereas silvers and golds you can only have 1 copy of each card, so we've only had 1 copy of everything I've shown you so far. This is 10 power, 4 armor, so it's kind of like TROLLOLOLO, but just a little bit weaker, which makes sense because it is a bronze card. We then have the AEDIRNIan MAULER, 7 power, deal 4 damage to an enemy. So this guy is kind of like TRISS, but a bit weaker. He's got 7 points of his own, and he deals 4 damage, and that damage is limited to enemies. So TRISS could target units on your side of the board, AEDIRNIan MAULER can't. But he is worth 11 overall, 7 plus 4. TEMERIAN Drummer is another card that's worth 11 overall. This is 5 power, but he boosts an ally by 6. So you can use him to give 6 extra points to an ally, and you want to be using those points on... If you have a deck where you have certain cards you want to protect, then you can boost them in order to give them a little bit of extra power. So these engine cards, for example, if you happen to have engine cards in your deck, you can use the TEMERIAN Drummer to protect them. It's worth noting that it's not very wise to put all of your boost onto one ally, because cards like Dudu exist where they, duplicate the power, for example. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your boosts on one ally. Then we have the TEMERIAN Infantry. 3 power, summon all copies of this unit. So when you play 1 TEMERIAN Infantry, it will pull the other 2 TEMERIAN Infantry out of your deck. So when you're doing your mulligan, you only want to have 1 of these in your deck, because when you play 1, you're going to pull the other 2 and get extra points, but if you have them in hand, you can't pull them out of your deck. And that's because it summons units, so it doesn't create any extra TEMERIANs, it just pulls them out of your deck. Moving on, we have ALZUR'S Thunder, which I talked about previously with DETHMOLD. We just have a copy of this on its own. This deals 9 damage. It's kind of just decent removal, worse than Manticore Venom, but still a decent amount of points. First Light you can use to spawn Clear Skies, which was another effect we saw in DETHMOLD, the one that removes the hazards. Alternatively, you can use this with Rally, and Rally will let you play a random bronze unit from your deck, so if you want to just pull a random bronze unit from your deck, that is what Rally will do. Then we have Thunderbolt, boost 3 adjacent units by 3 and give them 2 armor. So it's kind of similar to Commander's Horn. Commander's Horn hits 5 adjacents and gives them 3. This only does 3 adjacents, but they also gain armor, and this 2 armor could be useful. For example, if your opponent had played a hazard, maybe they're taking damage every turn from weather effect, for example, then you can use the armor to block that damage, at least for a few turns. Anyway, guys, that is the Northern Realms starter deck, and that's all of the cards in it. So let's jump into a game and we'll see these cards in action.
Here's the better loot than in your wildest, wettest dreams!
Close ranks!
Okay, so it's worth being aware of your opponent. We're currently against Harold the Cripple, and that often means that our opponent is likely to play Weather. So we're going to keep cards like DETHMOLD that have Weather Clear. In terms of the mulligan, you always want to mulligan so that you only have 1 TEMERIAN Infantry, and if you mulligan one of these, they get blacklisted, which means we won't draw any more. Similarly, we can then throw ROACH, and we'll then throw one of these TRIDAM Infantry, and try and find some gold cards. We actually got more Weather Clear, no gold cards, but that's okay. We also are quite fortunate in that we have a lot of removal, so this guy often plays cards that maybe we want to remove. And that's just a case of knowing your matchups, which you'll learn as you play the game. A good opener is King FOLTEST, because you'll notice he just boosted all of our cards, so that's gotten that boost out of the way, and has allowed us to boost all of our allies. If you play him later, you know, the problem is that if he passes and we don't play FOLTEST, then we haven't boosted any of the units on the board. You remember when I said he was likely to play weather, you guys? There is the weather, and that's put negative effects on all of our rows, so we're just going to clear this. And you can see that when we cleared that, it boosted King FOLTEST, and he healed. So let's wait and see what our opponent chooses to do here.
Have you nothing better to do?
So again, he's opted to play a weather effect, but this is probably not too much of a problem for us because at the moment there's only one, and he probably does have more weather, but we only have one more removal. So we need to be a little bit smart about how we play this. So for now, we're just going to allow the FOLTEST to get hit by the weather, and then we're going to play our units on other rows, ones that aren't affected by hazards. Our opponent may move units into the hazards, and that's something that can be a little bit problematic. But all in all, it's okay. Now this guy here, whenever an enemy on the opposite row is damaged, boosts self by 1. He also has 2 armor, which means if we want to kill him, we want to hit him for 9. Fortunately, we have ALZUR'S Thunder. So this is the kind of unit that you want to kill because it's an engine. Because every time this guy gets hit by the weather, that guy's going to get 1 point stronger. And we don't want that to happen, so we gonna kill him. That's basically how we're going to deal with this situation.
Told you it'd be worth it.
So let's play the TEMERIANs. We could also play the drummer and boost this guy, but actually, I like that better. Let's play the TEMERIAN drummer, and we'll boost the infantrymen. And you'll notice that I'm not stacking rows, even though Commander's Horn wants you to do that. Because when I play the TEMERIAN infantryman, I'm going to get 3 units in a row. So I'll automatically almost stack a row. And because this guy, his deck is reliant on having rows stacked, it's not something I really want to deal with.
Virgin, mother, and crone.
Okay, so he's got the Axeman back. We could kill this. The question is whether we think it's the right decision to kill it, because he may have more coming in the future. So whether we want to invest the Manticore Venom now. The alternative is that we could pass, but then he'll just play 1 card and he'll win the round. And I think this round we don't want to lose. But we don't need to play Manticore Venom just yet. You know, we can wait till that guy gets a bit bigger. So let's just play another TRIDAM infantry for now. And just get some more points on the board. And there you can see he's moved a unit onto the row. And he's trying to gain benefits from the weather. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play these TEMERIANs now and get those units on that middle row so that we have value there. Now the problem that we do have is that if he plays his leader, he's going to be zapping that unit in the back row for 1 point per turn. But there, this is what I meant about waiting for the weather, because he's just played more weather. So now,
Well then,
let's just clear skies, get rid of all that, and heal up the units that did get hit. And there he did play Harold, so maybe we should have shot that guy first, because now he's going to be too big for us to kill with the Manticore Venom. As it is though, he's only 8 points up, so let's play the MAULER, and we will deal 4 damage. This guy has armor, so it's not worth hitting him, because we lose a little bit of damage there. And so it probably would have been sensible to kill this guy. As it is, we'll play the Commander's Horn now. And again, we're still ahead, which is nice. And you can see that this guy's deck is very synergistic, and it would have also been quite good if we had Doo-Doo here, because we could have then duplicated the Axeman's strength, but unfortunately we didn't draw it. So we're just waiting to see what our opponent chooses to do.
Told you it'd be worth it.
So he's opted to play another Corsair into a boat, and that's going to give him points. And so our question is, do we want to play this, which would force him to play his last card? And I think the answer is yes, because this guy doesn't usually get strong cards, whereas we usually have bigger points. So if we can draw some bigger points, that's pretty good. So let's play the Manticore Venom, and we'll shoot this guy. And now we're 1 point up, which means that if he wants the round, he's going to have to commit his last card. So he's chosen to pass, which means we win the round by 1, which is fantastic. But we are 1 card down. Our opponent has 1 more card than us, which can be a problem. However, let's see what we draw first and foremost. So we want to mulligan the Thunderbolt Potion. Thunderbolt Potion really isn't great. You need 3 units in a row and we have 1 unit. Oh, and we got Roach, which is also not great. However, because neither of us has any cards on the board, what we can actually choose to do here is that we can choose to just pass. And then, because we've already won a round, we don't need to win this round. We only need to win 2 out of 3. And this means that our opponent has to play a card. And because he has to play a card, what that means is that we're then on even cards. We then have the same number of cards going into the final round, which means that we're both in, I would say, a pretty good position. And that's just something that's worth being aware of as you play this game. That you don't want to end up too many cards down, because then it's harder to win in later rounds. So now we drew a card, and we got a second Temerian Drummer. We're going to mulligan Roach, because we don't want to pull her. And we got TROLLOLO. Not a single gold card this game. That is, you know, that's really unfortunate, but it is something that happens sometimes. Our opponent has to go first, and he's played Ragnarug, so Weather on all rows. Unfortunately, we don't have any way to clear this, but what we can do is play TROLLOLO, and because he has armor, he's going to be able to basically take those hits from that weather, and it's not going to be a problem.
Martin Freyr is patient, but she brooks no insult.
So he's resurrected his Axeman because he wants him to gain points every turn. We're going to then play our Drummer, and on the same row, because these rows have negative effects, I don't want them to get hit, and we're going to boost our TROLLOLO and give him some more points.
Ho ho, I sense trouble.
He's then played Nova, which is a big card, but it's not quite big enough.
Army's a waste of time
because we do have the Temerian Drummer. So this is a big finisher, but as it was, his other cards weren't great. So we're able to overcome his points, and we're able to win the game. And you'll notice that that came down a lot to knowing the matchup. I knew that he was going to play Weather, and I knew that I needed to remove the engines. And that is something that you'll learn the more Gwent that you play. We'll send a good game. This just gives our opponent a little bit of rewards and is good habit because, you know, if everyone sends good games, then everyone wins. And you'll notice that you get daily rewards. And because I won 2 rounds there, my daily rewards increased by 2. But if I'd only won 1 round, then I would still gain progress on my daily rewards, even if I lost the game. So if you find that you're losing a lot, so long as you try and win 1 round, that's going to help you in order to gain progress, because once I get 6 rounds in a day, I'll earn 100 ore, which is enough to buy 1 keg, which is a card pack, and that's pretty useful. Let's jump into another game now and play the deck once more. Hopefully we'll see some gold cards this time.
Onward, sons of Nilfgaard! Onward! Attack!
So this time we're against Nilfgaard and Jan Calvé. You can see we actually got gold cards, which is good. We have 1 Temerian infantry, so we're just going to hold on to one of those. And this guy doesn't play Weather usually, so we can afford to throw the First Light. We'll keep DETHMOLD because he can always be used for Rain or for ALZUR'S Thunder. I'm also going to mulligan the Thunderbolt potion, I think. And we got Manticore Venom. I think I'll leave it at that. If I mulligan 1 more card, I could pull Roach, and I could pull Temerian Infantry, which we don't want to do. So I think at this point it's safe to stop mulliganing. Like, you don't always have to mulligan 3 cards just because you can.
Move! TRIDAM!
So our opponent has played a Slave Driver and duplicated 1 of our cards. A good opening play here is just to play FOLTEST, and because we're going second, it means that we don't have to necessarily keep up with his points. So long as we can catch his points in 2 cards, we'll only ever win the round by 1. Like, we'll only ever win the round 1 card down if we can do that, because you don't really want to often go 2 cards down. So he is playing points and just racking up points on the board. And I think now is a good time for us to thin these Temerian infantry out of the deck. So let's play one of those. And we get all 3. And you can see we're only 8 points behind our opponent, which means we can catch him up with 1 card. So let's wait and see what he wants to play. My opponent's deck is an alchemy deck, which means usually he runs Viper Witchers. So his goal is to kill big units. So the good news is at the moment we only have small units, and also our big units have armor, so we can negate a little bit of the damage. He's played a runestone, which will give him a gold card here, and he's actually played the false Ciri. So false Ciri, spying. If spying, boosts off by 1 on turn start, so every turn she boosts by 1. And then if I pass, what happens is she will travel to his side of the board. And that's not really something that we like as a situation. So what we can do here is we can play DETHMOLD into ALZUR'S Thunder and kill her. So this is what I mean by killing units on your side of the board. However, when we do kill her, she is going to kill FOLTEST. But actually, that's not too bad, because FOLTEST was only a 5. And so we've stopped him from generating points that way, because that was like an engine that plays on your side of the board, so something that's worth removing. And what we'll probably look to do next is we'll probably look to play TROLLOLOLO, because TROLLOLOLO has lots of armor. You can see his Witchers, they deal damage for each alchemy card in your starting deck. So usually these guys deal between, I would say, 9 and 11 damage. So then, if we play TROLLOLOLO, he's got loads of armor, so it means that that damage is less useful.
Let us see.
So he's played Rain Fun, and then he's played another spy on our side of the board, one that allows him to draw a card. So that's just something that sometimes happens, and this is a good target for him to be shooting. We'll play our TRIDAM infantry now. Again, because he has armor, it's quite useful to play him, because he can block damage. And we're likely to see him play a Viper Witcher and target Cantarella, because Cantarella's a big target, which means he can get lots of damage out. Okay, he's played the Foul Ale. Foul Ale deals 6 damage to each unit on a row. So sometimes if you're against this deck, maybe it's better to not play on every single row. I think what we'll do here is we will play the Temerian Drummer. And we'll just boost TROLLOLOLO, because he has armor, so it's kind of safer to boost him compared to some of the other cards we could choose to target here. And it's worth being aware our opponent has played 2 gold cards so far. We haven't played any. So he does at least 9 damage with his Viper Witches. Again, worth kind of being aware of. I think for now, let's just play Priscilla, because at the moment we have a lot of targets on the board.
Bad idea.
So if we play Priscilla, we've got more than 5 allies. It thins Roach, and it also gets a lot of points for us. So we're quite far ahead.
I shall not repeat Emir's mistakes.
Oh, so unfortunately he had a reset, which means he's reset TROLLOLOL. So all of the boosts that he had have been kind of removed. But we're still ahead, so we could choose to pass here. And then we would win the round, but he would have to play another card. Or we can choose to keep playing. I like to keep playing, but you could have the option if you think that you're confident that you can win round 2 and 3 to pass here. So let's play the Temerian Drummer. And we'll boost TROLLOLOL. Give him a few more points. So we're still ahead of our opponent. Okay, so he's boosted his leader. And he's going to have a card that resurrects that leader. And it's a pretty big play. I think we could probably afford to pass here. This is worth 15, this is worth 13, this is worth 16, so we have a lot of big plays we can make in the future rounds. And as such, we're also 9 points ahead, so we need to make a 10-point play to catch us. And it might be the case that he only has Resurrects, because this deck often has Resurrects and his graveyard is empty. So it could be a safe pass here. Alternatively, we could play. It's a hard decision. It's a hard decision. I think I'm gonna play. You know what? I'm gonna play into this round, and we'll kill the leader there. Unfortunately, he was able to boost it. He has a card that will resurrect his leader, so having it boosted like that is kind of problematic. So that means that we have a choice here. We can either choose to try and bleed him, in which case we would try and play cards such that he has to play cards, and then we'd have a better finisher. But I think his cards are also quite high tempo, in which case bleeding him is not going to work that well. I'm pretty okay with this hand. The question is he going to play something big enough that Dudu is going to see value? And for now, we'll have to wait and see. Again, we're going to just pass this round because we're one card down, and we want to be on even cards going into the final round in order to give us the best opportunity to win. And so there you can see he played one of his Resurrects, which are quite common in this style of deck, into an Ale, which was kind of not a great play for him, but it's okay. I think maybe he's trying to thin his deck. So you can resurrect the novices, and then they will draw an alchemy card from your deck, and then you could try and chain resurrect, basically, so you resurrect multiple novices. So this suggests that maybe he doesn't have the hand that he wants. I'm going to throw the first light, and we got a Temerian drummer, which is okay. So we'll have to just wait and see what it is he chooses to play. You can see him looking at his graveyard, which means he has these Resurrect. So the Resurrect card that he played is Ointment. Resurrect a bronze unit. Where did it go? Here it is. Resurrect a bronze unit with 5 power or less. So he can resurrect all of these guys. And so he's played, this is the play where he resurrects his leader. Then he plays Kahir. He looks at the top 3 cards from his deck and then plays 1. He plays Yan. And he resurrects Vicavaro and then Ale. So this is what I mean about crazy plays. He just played 28 points in 1 card. Though we do have an okay target for Dudu at the moment with that 15 in the middle. I'm going to play the TRIDAM Infantry because it has armor, and having armor is quite useful. And then we'll have to kind of wait and see. Our opponent has played 3 gold cards, I think. Yep, so he's potentially got 1 more to play. We'll have to kind of wait and see.
I shall flog them into submission.
So there's Wakim. Wakim, you play on your opponent's side, and then you draw a bronze card and boost it. Unfortunately, it's only an 11, so again, not a great target for Dudu, but he is making some pretty big tempo plays here. Again. So let's play our drummer now, and we'll boost the infantryman. Because he has the armor, and we want to block against the damage.
Quite the mean little task.
So there's his last gold card, Vilgefortz. He burns one of his own units and then draws a unit. Which actually he didn't have any more alchemy cards to play. He's kind of thinned his deck a little bit too much. So that's okay. We'll take Triss out of the deck here. We'll pop her down.
I'll do what I
and we'll deal 5 damage to a target. And, you know, not hitting his biggest target because his biggest target I'm going to want to target with Dudu.
Here's our chance.
And then the Witcher, unfortunately, the Viper Witcher comes out and hits Triss. We'll then play Geralt.
Let's get this over with.
For 16 points. He plays Ointment, and he's going to resurrect a Viper Witcher and shoot Geralt, I would have thought, yeah. So, unfortunately, we don't quite have enough points with our deck. It was pretty close, but he had that very, very big play in the opener. And if you have that sort of play, sometimes it's just hard to keep up. So, we won 1 round, 52 to 64, so we didn't lose by a huge margin. You know, I think we gave it our best effort. And bear in mind, this is the starter deck, whereas the deck we're playing against there, I would say, is a competitive meta deck. You see it a lot on the rank ladder. So considering how well we did, I would say that, you know, this is just testament to the quality of the starter decks. And, you know, this is a deck you can start to tweak and you can start to change. And as you go about your deck building, you'll start to see what synergies work. So that guy, for example, he was running an alchemy synergy. And alchemy synergy can be quite useful in Nilfgaard. Whereas Northern Realms, we have things like machines and armor strategies and those kind of things. And if we had more armor in this deck, you know, he would have gotten less value from his Viper Witchers. So we could have potentially, you know, if we had more of an armor deck, we maybe would have been able to win. So these are the kind of things you want to think about when you do lose. Think about, you know, why I lost and how I can change my deck. But you'll notice we still got a daily reward. We still got 1 round, so we're still making progress. And when we get to those 6 rounds, we will be able to open a pack. So here we are back in the deck builder, and I want to very quickly talk to you guys about changes to the deck you could make or different directions you might want to go in with deck building. We saw at the end of game 2 that our opponent played a big tempo play, and if you want to include more big tempo plays in your deck, a great card to include is SIGISMUND DIJKSTRA. He is 4 power spying, so you play him on your opponent's side of the board, and then you play 2 random cards from your deck. So there is a little bit of RNG involved in this, a little bit of randomness, but imagine if you pulled GERALT and TRISS, for example. That's going to give you 30 points of power for 4 points to your opponent. So DIJKSTRA is a really strong card if you want to make tempo plays. If you want good all-round Northern Realms cards, then we have SHANI here. SHANI resurrects a non-cursed bronze or silver unit and gives it 2 armor. So she doesn't work in cursed decks, but other than that, you can resurrect bronze or silver units that you need. For example, maybe our opponent played more weather. We could use SHANI to resurrect DETHMOLD on a later round in order to gain clear, or to utilize the ALZUR'S Thunder. She is a generally useful card, and it gives you a lot of options, which I like. And she also fits into any Northern Realms deck. Another option that you could choose to go for is John Natalis. John Natalis plays a bronze or silver tactic from your deck. So tactic is a tag that certain cards have. For example, Commander's Horn, which we have in the deck, actually has the tactics tag. So we can use John Natalis in order to target draw Commander's Horn. Other tactics include cards like Decoy. Replay a bronze or silver ally and boost it by 3. So if you have an ally that has a useful deploy effect, like DETHMOLD for example, you can use this to replay it. So you could replay the ALZUR'S Thunder or the Rain or the Clear Skies. And you can target draw this with Natalis. Similarly, Reinforcements is a Northern Realms only tactic. Play a bronze or silver soldier, machine, officer, or support unit from your deck. And a lot of cards have these tags. So this is targeted draw. So you can go John Natalis, pick Reinforcements, and then targeted draw something and gain value. And a good card to targeted draw is Stennis, because Stennis is an officer. So he plays a random non-spying bronze or silver unit from your deck and gives it 5 armor. So he works nicely in an armor archetype. But he's also an officer, which means that you can play John Natalis into Reinforcements, into Stennis, and then thin a bronze or silver unit from your deck, which is really good thinning and really good tempo. So that's why I think Natalis is pretty solid. And Stennis also gives that unit armor. So if you're going to go for an armor strategy, we can utilize Stennis. And if you're doing that, then you probably also want to run the Kidweni Cavalry. These destroy a unit's armor and then boost self by the amount destroyed. And this is a bronze card. So you could use this to then remove that 5 armor and gain 5 points to this unit. He also works nicely with TROLLOLOLO. Now, you maybe want to go for a machines archetype instead, which I mentioned earlier. And machines, they have this crew effect. So a good example of a machine here is the battering ram. 6 power, deal 3 damage to an enemy. If you kill the enemy, if it's destroyed, then you get to deal another 3 damage. But if you place it next to a crew, you increase the initial damage by 1. So this utilizes that crewman synergy, which I mentioned with FOLTEST as your leader, that you can place this next to crew. And lots of units have crew, but one unit that's worth crafting that has crew is RONVID the Incessant. He resurrects on a random row with 1 power on turn end. So if he dies, he has 11 power. If he dies, he comes back as 1 strength. And he has crew tag, which means you more or less have a permanent crewman. Because at the end of the round, he goes to the graveyard, and then at the start of the next round, he'll resurrect and you'll gain 1 point. But you'll also gain that crew effect. So he is kind of carryover and crew. And so if you're going for machines, this is maybe a card that I would suggest to craft. But honestly, guys, it's up to you what you want to do, how you want to change the deck. Do you want to kind of stick with this boosting and removal archetype? Would you like to go for machines? Would you like to go for armor? Would you like to go for curse? There's lots of different options to play around with and lots of different decks out there. So yeah, just have fun with it. And hopefully you found this whole thing informative. Thank you guys for watching. If you'd love to know more about the Northern Realms and its various archetypes, you can head on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jaggerous, or you can catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Jaggerous. We hope to see you next time.